Okay, here we are. Hang on, I'm just going to make sure that everything is rolling and that people are can see us on. So just hang on a second. Okay, hang on a second. All right, cool. We're gonna roll right in, um, and we're just gonna kick off. So, hello, welcome everyone. How's it going? How are we today? Just a quick check. Feeling good? Excited? Go
Doing good.
ahead. I love it. I love it. Amazing. Welcome to everyone who is here, who is listening with us. We're so excited to be here and talk about community. I'm so excited about this topic because as a former head of community turned entrepreneur in the online space, I suddenly started hearing like the word community get thrown around in so many different ways. And I'm like, what is happening? And why aren't we like actually putting some structure around this and getting clear on what it means and who it's for and what we're actually thinking about and talking about? So I'm excited to have these experts in the room with us. And what I really want everyone who's here today to leave with is just a clear understanding of like, what are we really talking about when it comes to community? And it can mean a lot of different things to different people. And then how can we as business owners use communities to help us grow our business, achieve our goals, so on and so forth? And then how do we really like nurture community, right? And actually like build something meaningful? Because I think community is like a big word and we're just not really always taking the ownership around all of it. So high level, that's what we're going to get into today. But I don't want the talking to be just me because we have some amazing people here. So I would love for you three to introduce yourselves. Ingrid, we'll start with you because you're first kind of on my screen. Hi, Ingrid. Tell us about yourself.
Hi, thank you for having me, Frenchie. I'm so honored to be here with such amazing, awesome people. My name's Ingrid. I'm tuning in from New Jersey. It is cloudy and gloomy, and it's affecting my vibe, but it's going to be fine. I am the founder of Working Mom Kind. I founded it about 7 years ago, which is a community for moms, and that led me to my second business baby, Grow with Community, where now I help businesses transform their audiences into communities. And I'll be talking more about everything that I do through the chat today. So I'm excited to share more.
Amazing. Welcome, welcome. All right, Car.
Hi, I'm Kar Brulhart. I'm a social media strategist and I have a program called the Social Department, which is my signature offer. It's a group program where I help people make more sales and grow their following organically on Instagram. I live in Mexico City. It's very hot here, as you can see by my attire. I was also woken up at 5 a.m. and then my 2-year-old proceeded to pee on me. So if I look disheveled, that is why. I did not have a good sleep. But I'm really excited to be here to talk about community because it's something that I've grown organically up until now. And it's so important, especially as we start to see, especially algorithms changing, Instagram platforms shutting down or changing. And really excited to be here with all of you.
I love it. Bailey.
I'm glad I'm not the only one this morning. I did not get peed on, so you win. But my kids both woke up at 4:55 and proceeded to stay awake. So at 6:15, my husband's like, "I think we're just going to take him to school." And I was like, "I'm pretty sure there's a doors opening time and it is not now." So it's also been a long morning here, but so excited to be here. I've been really looking forward to this conversation with all of you. I'm Bailey. I'm a connection strategist and professional friend maker, and I help people learn how to build, nurture, and leverage relationships to achieve their goals. And so a lot of that comes down to harnessing the power of community connection and collaboration to increase visibility, credibility, and impact in the world.
I love it. I love it. Amazing, amazing. So many experts. I would say I feel like the least expert at community here. I just spent 2.5 years growing and scaling a notorious community at the Wing. And so I'm excited to just learn from all of you and for, everyone who is listening to learn from all of you. So we're just going to dive right in and just start talking about what we need to talk about. So I kind of mentioned this at the outset, but I really just want to start with all of us here talking about really defining what does community mean in our businesses, right? So I think we can go like, a little wild in terms of in the world, what does a community mean? But for each of you individually in the work that you do, whether you're consulting, whether you have your own communities, a combination of all of it, what does community mean in your work and in your business? So Bailey, I'm going to hand it over to you to start. We're going to go
Sure.
backwards this way.
Community has meant a lot of different things throughout my life, throughout my businesses. whenever people talk about community, I always want to be like, okay, but what do you mean exactly? Because I don't think audience is community. I think that's a potential place to get people to your community. But at this phase of my business and how I think about it in the work that I do is your community are your people. So to me, community is synonymous with network. And your network is made up of a bunch of the communities that you're part of. So whether that's your work community, that's your kids' school community, it's intramural kickball community, it's your college group community. It's like all of your circles make up your network, and that overall is what I consider your community.
Okay. I love that. Par.
Yeah, I love that you said that because when I first went out on my own 4 years ago, this is my fourth year of business, I thought that community meant my Instagram following because that's what I
Mhm.
pegged everything on. And then I started to realize very quickly that I didn't own that audience or those relationships. I actually got hacked about a year into my business, and I realized like, holy, all of my relationships, all of my leads, all my contacts, all my clients are gone, and I have no control over that. And so for me, my definition of community has shifted a lot in towards something that I actually own, so to speak. And so I've actually spent the last 2 years shifting my community off of Instagram to a platform that I physically own, and my email list. And so my community are my people, my clients that resonate with my mission and my state, and what I'm looking to help other people achieve, which is to build their businesses organically and sustainably in a way that feels really authentic to them without feeling like they have to be influencers. So that's my community definition at this point in time.
Yeah. It's definitely evolving. And Ingrid.
Like that's what's so beautiful about community, that it really can be what you want it to be. And I think this is good and bad because, like you said, Frenchie, there's so many different definitions of what people consider a community. And I feel like the way I'm Mexican American, so like I grew up with community being just who I am from a very young age, from like leaving home after graduating college and starting over to then like having a baby and like having none of my family and my friends around me. So I feel like we belong to many different communities throughout our life personally, but it really is the people that you pick up along the way that then become a part of your web that you can go to for many different things at in different phases of your life that I consider a part of my community. But similar to what Car just said, I also started my first community work in Momkind as a social front. Like it really was a social media profile that then evolved into an actual community outside of Instagram. And it took me a few years and a few speed bumps to realize the same thing. Like I'm trusting everything that I'm putting all of my trust in a social media platform that I have no insight into, no transparency, and that I don't own. And I'm just expecting for this to be safe forever and feel like it's, something that is always going to be there. And so I think you just kind of learn the definition that works with your business. And I think that's what's really cool, that there's many different ways that you can shape a community and nurture one depending on what it aligns with what you're trying to do in your goals in business. But personally, it's the people that you pick up along the way. Like this right now. You guys are
Yeah.
going to just jump into my web.
I love it. I love it. Yes. I think that makes perfect sense. And I think what a lot of you said about just this idea of like Instagram being the community, I think when I started this work after the wing and I heard people talking about their Instagram audiences or their Instagram followers as their community, I was kind of confused by it. I was like, that's not a community to me, right? But that's because I came from like this physical space where we were bringing people
Yeah.
together in events and I was like, is it a community? Are they just your followers? Are they just your audience? And that kind of rolls into my next question, which is I think as I've kind of gotten more entrenched in this conversation, the thing that I have really started to think about is community can be an audience that we nurture to kind of grow our business, and it can also be the product that we sell and that we offer. And I think both things can be true, but as business owners, I think we need to distinguish between the two so that we can then make the right choices for our own business growth. And so my question is really, as if you were advising people on community as a product versus community as a marketing tool, what kind of tools and strategies would you suggest for each one? Car, I'm going to start with you and then we'll kind of go around.
Yeah. Sorry, can you repeat the question? It was the tool. Sorry,
Yeah,
can
yeah,
you
yeah.
just
No,
repeat
it's
the
okay.
question?
It's okay.
Got
So yeah, if
distracted.
you are basically like thinking about community as a marketing tool, which is one kind of approach, or community as a
Mhm.
product, what tools and
Mm.
strategies would you suggest to people who are either looking to market through community or sell a community-based product?
So for me, so I do Instagram, so you're going to hear me kind of repeat those things over and over. But I went from having all of my community basically on an app that I had no control over, couldn't really manage my relationships properly or really properly track conversions and who was doing what and who was doing where, right? Depending on what product. And so I actually ended up switching over to a platform called Circle, which many of you might be familiar with. And it is where I am now hosting my program. But on top of that, it's not just for paid members or for paid community. I also have all the people that get any kind of freebie from me are welcome to join the lounge, which I call it, so that they can also be a part of that and see what's going on with the other kind of paywalls, other membership areas. But it's been like a shift from thinking that everything has to be in one platform where it can actually live on several platforms that you have much more control over. So for me, it's like giving access to that freemium and also that paid level of access to me. Of course, with different experience and different access points, but that has helped me a lot in order to also like give people additional insights into what it's like to work with me, as well as like my personality that maybe isn't coming across just on an Instagram platform.
Totally, totally. I love that. And I love the idea that like it doesn't always have to just be in one place and that like you can kind of move people through this journey, right?
Mhm.
Into different levels of access and connection with you. So I think that's great. Ingrid, how are you seeing it? And obviously you are helping people build their own communities. So I'm sure you're seeing it in lots of different ways. And so what tips and tools do you have for people?
Yeah, so I feel like I want to just go back to something that you said right before you asked the question about the like social media being described as a community. And I feel like the reason why this started is because we come together for a shared purpose. And so these accounts that you see have a shared purpose. There's a common theme happening. And so people are gathering and coming together for that. And so it is, in a sense, a type of a community, but there's only so much that you can do. There's only so
Mm-hmm.
many characters, and like your options are limited of interacting and nurturing those people. And so I feel like for me, that said, I always say that social media should be the front door to your community. But what
Mm-hmm.
happens after that is just completely up to you. And you need to align that based on your target audience and what the goals of your business, your service, your offering are. And so that's very important to understand, because I feel like we can all agree with what I'm about to say, that social media can be very overwhelming. I think
Mm-hmm.
that where we are right now is completely different than when we were 5 years ago, and you can't grow as fast as you can. It's just not the same. Your content is not being seen. The algo will either like you or not, and if it does, it will favorite you. If it doesn't, then it's not going to. Car, I'm sure you have a lot to say about this. But and so like I always say, like especially to business owners that are just starting out and they're like, I just want to go viral, I want to do all these things. My advice is like, you need to be present on social media, but you need to see it as just like one of the many tools. Like we're not where we were 7 years ago, so like use it as one of your tools, but then also pave a path to different places where you can actually nurture. So like what Car said, a circle platform, or Mighty Networks, a newsletter, and then from there get to know your audience, survey them, figure out what will work for them, and then start adding different things that can help you nurture. So I just like to see social media as a starting point, but then from what you do after that is what really counts.
Yeah, yeah. And Bailey, how about you? What have you seen? Because you've seen people in sorts of all sorts of platforms. So I'd love to
Yeah.
hear kind of what you think people need to think about on the marketing side versus the product side.
It's a really important distinction because I worked at Mighty Networks for 2 years as a community strategist and worked with hundreds of communities. And when it didn't go well, it was because the community creator, I saw freemium not work over and over and over. And the primary reason was because the free part of the community had no value in and of itself. It was just it was a place to convert them into paid members, which as a potential member is not very compelling, right? So my caveat to my community creators that I worked with was always like, if you're going to leverage this home base as the place that you funnel all potential people to, kind of like how we do with a newsletter, right? Like if this is your top of the funnel growth tactic, which is perfectly fine and like definitely has success opportunities, that top needs to be compelling. Like if your community is a marketing strategy as opposed to the product itself, then just like you need good lead magnets or you need compelling emails like Frenchie is so good at sending, you have to make your community, even the free part, feel like a place people want to be. Because otherwise they're going to show up, realize very quickly, oh, this is literally like just an elevator bank. And I can see all the floors that people are going to, but like I can't actually go to the floor unless I'm a member. And like there were so many analogies I tried to use where it was like, maybe there's a bulletin board in the elevator bank that's like giving, a calendar of upcoming events. But there is something to be said for being able to actually experience what membership is once you're in there. And so the way we would work with that was like maybe do one event a month where everybody's welcome to so that they can like experience that. And I will say on Mighty, that was really hard to do because it was very segmented, right? And so I don't know if it's different with Circle and some of the other platforms, but whatever it is, it's like you have to be mindful that people can tell when they're being just sold to and marketed to. And unless there's value there with that free part of it, they're going to lose them. They're not going to convert. You're better off converting them somewhere else, like in some kind of free challenge or like whatever, right? Like one of those other tactics or one of those other locations that Car mentioned. And so, yeah, if community is the marketing strategy, put yourself in the shoes of the person that's at the very top of your funnel who is not yet a paying member. If they come in, are they going to get any sort of sense for what it's actually like to be a member? Are they getting any value? And I would argue that like having their downloadable or lead magnet or whatever they initially download from you to get in there, that is value. But that's a one-time thing they need to come in for. They get it and then they leave and never come back. So it's like, what is happening consistently that even if they never become a paid member, there's something there for them to do. And that will convert people over time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk about engagement, but I just have a quick question, which is that if you create a product or sell a product that brings a group of people together, in your opinion, is that a community by definition or not? Like, is there a difference between like just a membership where it's a group of people who are buying something, or do you have to assume that is a community and then you need to build it as such? I just
I
want you
have
jumping on
feelings.
this one.
Yeah, I'm like, I have a thought.
I know we're like, wait.
Right.
I'll say for me, I don't think that inherently makes them a community just because they've all purchased the same thing. If they're purchasing a thing that has a cohort component where part of the offer, part of the thing that they are paying for is access to other people to go through the thing with, then yes, that can become a community. But it starts to get a little fuzzy when it's like, oh, we all have this thing in common. We all signed up for this thing or downloaded this thing. That does not make them a community. And I think that there's like a key piece here for me about what entails a community. Social media, email newsletters, like podcasts, those are all one-way communication. So yes, you have an audience of people that's listening to you, reading you, watching you, but they're not doing anything together. And they're maybe responding to you from time to time, but it's at most one-to-one. So a community to me is one to many and many to each other. And so like I as a connection strategist, to me, community doesn't exist without connection or the potential for connection. Like that is my specific community definition, is it's a place where people can connect with each other over a shared goal or a shared interest or a shared like location, demographic, whatever it is. But the connection piece is imperative for it to count as a community in my brain.
Got it.
I love that you said that, Bailey, because I think that Instagram is kind of like catching on to this as a platform in general. And now we can see with the rise of broadcast channels that there are new features that you can actually not just have a one-way conversation. People can like submit questions and, participate actively. So I definitely agree with everything that you said.
Yeah. Ingrid, you were like I saw you getting excited. Wait, you're on mute. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, that was weird. No, I feel like I agree with everything, but I always like to say that community building is a two-way street. Like you
Hmm.
can't just give and call that a community. You have to get a little back too, and I think that's kind of like the hidden secret of what it takes to build something. You have to build something good enough to where you get to the point where people want to give back and
Hmm.
vice versa. So very similar to what Baily and Carr said.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So I think on that, right, one thing that I know to be true, and in the communities that I've been a part of where I see them really thriving and people renewing and people being, connected to the community, is that there is this like internal motivation, right, for the people who are a part of it to contribute as well as to receive, right? There is that two-way street. And that to me, that is really like the hallmark of engagement. And so for people who are thinking about building their own communities, right, what have you seen as effective tools and ways to actually encourage community members to be good citizens in the community? And what hasn't worked also? We love to hear what doesn't work, but really like, how have you seen people really show up in the best possible ways, and how have you fostered that? Ingrid, I'll
Yeah,
start with you.
for me, I would say two things. The first one is making sure that you have your value proposition right up front and clearly defined, because I went through this with Working Mom Kind. I wanted to give back so much where I was like, you know what, maybe I don't have to charge for this membership because we're moms, we have enough to deal with. But that also leads people to not want to invest their time and commitment to it. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
being very clear about where you want to go and how you want your community to grow is very important. And I feel like as much as you want to give, there's avenues and different ways in which you can make people invest in your community. And then I would say the other one is really staying close to your early supporters and paying attention to who they are, because to add to what you said, Frenchie, is like finding ways to involve them and making them feel like they are a part of what you're building in your community further proves the point of what community building is about, which is bringing people together, but also like building something together. And so if you can identify who your early supporters are and find ways to include them, even if it's like as guest, like podcast guests or guest writers, moderators for events, like anything that aligns with the type of content that you're sharing is a great way to not only spread the word about your community, but also make people feel like they're involved and get others excited to potentially eventually be one of those people.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Bailey.
Yeah, lots of feelings on engagement. I think the top one, honestly, is tell people how you want them to engage. Because so often we create communities and we just make up all of these like goals and desires for how our members are going to come in and interact. And we dream up like, oh, they're going to be so excited about this thing and they're going to chat over here and they're going to come to all the events and they're going to comment on all the posts. And then it can be crickets and you're like, what's wrong? Like, why aren't they commenting? Why aren't they posting? Why aren't they engaging with each other? And it usually comes back to the fact that in the onboarding, which PS onboarding is very important,
Mm-hmm.
and many people skip that part too. Onboarding orientation, like welcoming people, giving them community guidelines or community best practices, like modeling the behavior, all of that is so important because people all have different assumptions about what, I mean, as a member, you're not thinking about your engagement, right? You're thinking about like, what do I want from this? And that's one of the things I try and talk and preach about too, from a connection lens, is like, if you're part of communities, you need to be adding good community karma before you start like promoting yourself or asking people for things or whatever. And it's shocking how many times people are like, oh, I never really thought about the fact that like I should probably give my time and my comments and my posts like before I ask for things. It's just not top of mind because I think when we join a membership or a community, it is from your perspective. You're like, I'm here for X, Y, and Z. And so I think just cueing people and helping them understand like, here's best practices. We would love for you to comment on other people's posts or even just like give it a like or share what's interesting to you or what you found valuable. A lot of times that's enough to get people like, oh, okay, sure, I'll do that. And then that helps train the other members to do the same. So a lot of it is modeling, walking the walk, and telling them exactly what you would like. What's not even what you would like, but what is welcome and acceptable, because not every community once they're members, posting a bunch. I had a
Right.
lot of community creators who were like, can I turn off the ability for them to post and comment on things? And I was like, you can, but why are you here? This seems
Good point.
just stay on Kajabi or stay on wherever, right? Like, why are you here? So if you want members to engage, show them that it's okay and they're not going to get in trouble or they're not going to be like ostracized if they do. Like, walk the walk so they know that they're safe to do so.
Love it.
I think it can be so overwhelming when you're creating a community, especially I'm imagining a lot of people watching don't have a place like this yet. And so the way I used to think about it was like, if I were to invite somebody over to my home to stay for the night, what would be the kind of like next steps that they would need to feel really confident and at home and comfy and have a good night's sleep? And so then you can think about like, what does that onboarding look like? And like get really detailed. Like, here's where the towels are so you can have a shower. Here's how the hot water works. Here's there's a man that walks down the street sometimes and yells, "Don't be scared," right? Like, this is what happened. Like, someone literally just did that right now. But something that's been really key for me with the social department is actually separating out channels into very specific categories. So not just expecting everybody to go into like a chat area and also have the chat serve as like the Q&A place or the content review place or whatever, like customer support place, because then it becomes really, really crowded with things that aren't actually interesting for people. So that's been really huge. Another thing too is like tagging community members. So knowing your community. So really understanding who makes up your community. What do they do? What are their businesses? And how can they help each other? And then you start forging connections among community members. They start working together. They start actually getting excited to come back and check your channel every day because it's like friends or colleagues, and they start to really feel at home there. So that's been really big for me. And then the other thing that I think that we haven't really talked about too much is pricing. I think Baily mentioned it or Ingrid mentioned it. If everything's free or everything's $7 a month, believe it or not, like I've been like at 4xing my prices consistently because I noticed that when it's too cheap, people just don't come. And even like $200 a month is sometimes too cheap for people to actually do the work and come and feel like they're part of a cohort or a community.
Yeah.
People pay attention to what they pay for, right? Like, that's a thing.
Totally. I think that makes total sense. I'm curious, and Car, this is like kind of more specifically for you, is that people are joining your community, right? They're joining the social department with the goal to learn from you. And sometimes what I imagine is that in these community settings, right, like what people want is like, I imagine sometimes more access to you and to your expertise and to your knowledge. How have you kind of navigated this like group engagement versus like all roads lead to Car, both from like a bandwidth perspective for you, but also to like really build that community feel?
Yeah, so I've actually just created a curriculum. This is really interesting. Recently, I downloaded all of my one-to-one calls that I had in the last year and like the transcripts, so the text files, and I downloaded all of my group calls because I've been doing social department now for over 2 years. And I dumped it into ChatGPT and I got ChatGPT to summarize like the most frequently asked questions. I obviously had to prompt it a lot, but it came up with a rubric for me with 4 main quadrants for how I could think about structuring a curriculum, which answers like meets people wherever they're at without actually having to have one-to-one access to me. And so my program now follows this 4-point curriculum. And I'm super confident that I've covered all my bases there. And then if they want extra one-to-one attention, that's where we have our weekly group coaching calls where they come and they ask questions related to that curriculum or to whatever's going on with their mindset. And that's when they get their one-to-one attention with me. And of course, there's always the option to book a one-to-one call, but that's not scalable. Like I literally lost my voice from doing so many one-to-one calls. And I love one-to-one calls. Like I will always do them. I've heard people say like, oh, you're probably going to stop doing that soon. I'm like, no, like this is where I learn. This is what I love doing and how I connect with people. But that's been game changing is like coming up with a curriculum that not only mirrors your program promise, so like there's nothing in there that is not going to get somebody a result, whether it be to grow their following or make a sale on Instagram organically, so no ads. Otherwise, it doesn't serve anybody, and it creates more work for me. And last thing I'll say is that it also creates a really disjointed community where everyone's asking different things. You have different levels. You have people who are not adding value because maybe they're a beginner or maybe they're too advanced. And then that's when people disengage. And I've noticed that in my own groups. And so I've mitigated that by having these frameworks and areas that people can go to get the support that they need exactly on what it is that they're currently going through. So that's been really key.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about mistakes because I think that we all make them, we've all seen them. And so in kind of whether it's like directly with your clients, people that you're helping, or just like out in the world, I personally have a lot of opinions about what's happening out in the world. Like, where do you see people really missing the mark on this idea of community? What kinds of mistakes are you seeing people make that you're like, can we just stop doing this? So yeah, Ingrid, what are you seeing that kind of bugs you?
I feel like for me, from what I've seen, is thinking that you have to have thousands of followers within your circle to even start thinking about building a community that works for you. I've noticed, and even like from my own case study, that the smaller you start, the better, because that's when you make the tweaks. That's when you can make them like more mistakes without being so embarrassed to fix, and really like start to shape and get to know your people to understand what you want it to look like when you are ready to welcome more and more people. So I always tell people, like, don't wait. If this is what you can't stop thinking about, if it makes sense for you and your target audience, like put it out there, think about what works for you and start building, because it's going to evolve throughout time, and that's okay. And I also always think about how we all consume content so differently depending on our vibes, our moods, and just where we are in that stage in our lives. And so what might work right now might not work 3 years down the road, but like this is what you start to build to get to know your people and adjust as you go. So just don't wait. If this is what you want to do it, and then change and work on moving things around as you build.
Love it. Baily.
I think one of the biggest mistakes I see is having a community because you think you should, not because you, like Ingrid just said, like you really want it and you feel like that's the next step in your business, because it kind of is. It's like you're taking all of those relationships you've built with your audience to the next level. You're going to get to know each other much more intimately than you already have. And I saw it happen with a lot of community creators who they were like, well, this is the next logical thing I should do. And everybody's got a community. I should have one too. So let's spin one up. Let's invite people in. And, I loved your question to Car about like access, right, to her specifically. And I worked with kind of a celebrity who created a community because she thought she should. And we invited all these people in, and they were like her super fans. They were like, they'll do anything she asks. They got in there. They, of course, thought that their membership to her community with her name on it meant they were going to have access to her. And she was still like, oh, no, I'm not going to talk to you guys. Or no, I could never. And I was like, why did we do this? Because she had a really active and thriving text situation, whatever that's called, like a text community, I guess, where it was all one way. And she loved that. And she loved that she could send a text and it would go to like 2,000 people. And she hated that only like 50 people joined her community. I think there was some ego involved with that. And it was like, well, I'm not going to waste my time only talking to 50 people when I could be doing, these greater reach things. And I'm like, well, let's take this back to the whole point. And so I literally have a guide called 50 Questions to Consider for a Thriving Community. And the first 10 questions are around purpose of the community. Like, why do you need to do this? Why doesn't it already exist? Why you? Do your people want this? Has anybody asked for this? Like, that's something to consider too. Sometimes your community does not want access to each other. They don't need that. That's not their point. So there's a lot there around like expectation, like you should have a community, so you do it. You should never do things just because you think you should. You should have a really good purpose behind it, because communities take a lot of work. And they take a lot of emotional work, a lot, because I think for the first 6 months to a year, I think it's wise to be the one running the community if you're creating it instead of farming it out to somebody else, because that data is way too important in the beginning to just give to a moderator, right? You need to be on the ground. And so people forget that like that's an additional 15 to potentially more hours a week that you suddenly now have to give. Yeah, or way more than that.
Clapping at
So
all this. So like, yes, especially the
yeah.
moderator bit.
Oh my God. That's an emotional, that's like customer support,
Yeah.
therapy, customer service. Like it's so much. It's like when people say, oh, I want to have a baby. I'm always like, you need to
Don't
think
do it.
about, you're not having a baby. You're having a baby for like a year and then you're having a child forever.
Yeah.
Like think long term here. So yeah, it's short term thinking. And I think the main thing that bothers me about just spinning up a community to do it is then when inevitably you change your mind, it's like you're returning the puppy back to the kennel, right? And it's like now all of those people feel worse about you than they did before instead of better. And you've just damaged like your relationship with your audience. And that's a tough one to come back from.
Yeah.
Har, how about you? What are some things that
Oh
you,
man, I have some thoughts, some
some
spicy
spicy
thoughts
thoughts? I
on
can't
this. You know what I am so sick of is all the same shit. All
Yeah.
the stuff that looks the same, where you join and it's just basic things that you could have Googled, to be honest, or watched on
wait.
YouTube for free, or even watched on that creator's YouTube for free without paying for it. And it's all just a big plan to upsell you. And at every turn and twist, there's an upsell, a downsell, a cross sell, a click up, a down click. Like, I hate it. And what I'm really bothered by is that I'm starting to see women engage in what I call broy marketing tactics that have gotten these big male creators with real male energy, like millions of dollars and millions of followers. And I'm just seeing women now use it as a template to success. And so what ends up happening is everything looks the same. Everything's jam packed with templates and lists and downloads and PDFs and free challenges and trainings. And none of it actually moves the needle. And so what I really want to start seeing is like women, especially creating unique experiences and programs that really meet people where they're at, with the ultimate goal of whatever that transformation or that program promise is. And that's really missing in the industry right now, especially in the Instagram world.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I really love that. And I just so resonate with this idea of like we don't have to do it. It's like I think community marketing is kind of like the new green marketing a little bit. And it's like, oh, you're gonna find your people. And it's like some of the most amazing communities I've heard about and read about started kind of organically. Like there's like a running club in
Yes.
Harlem that was like just these people who were like running. They started a pizza shop. They like ran their way back, and that it just grew and grew and grew. And their shared purpose is to run together, right? But like it's very simple, and there is this kind of organic side to it that I think is really, really powerful. And I think when you, right, back to this idea of like you should, or, you know, you're not ready or whatever it is, like when you do it because it feels like a requirement, I think that's when you then get even more easily sucked into some of the broy marketing tactics that Car's talking about,
Yep.
because you don't really want to do it. So it's not coming from your heart. And you're just like, well, now I got to learn from some dude about like how I build a membership. And like, yeah, of course I want a membership because of monthly recurring revenue. And like, I love monthly recurring revenue, but only if the value exchange actually like lands and has an impact on the end user. So anyways, I think this is so, so helpful. So before we roll into question, oh yeah, go ahead, Ingrid.
Add that I feel like people can tell when you're forcing something,
Mhm.
and
It's
Yes.
that's
desperate.
it defeats the purpose of bringing, like, genuinely bringing people together. And so, like, that's like my biggest thing. It's like you can't force it. You just have to kind of, you'll know when it's time because people will be asking for it, or your time, like Car said, it's like I have no more time, so I have to figure out the next step to like cater to as many people as I can in different ways. Like you will know, but if you're forcing it, it's not time yet.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I love that.
That's true. And it's also so much energy and an energetic exchange that takes place. It's not just like coming onto a Zoom call or responding to people's questions a couple times a day or something, right? Like, so I think that if it's not really feeling natural to you, you need to ditch it and ditch it quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will, at least for the time being, for the foreseeable future, I will put a stake in the ground. I run groups, I run group programs. I'm glad that they all come together. I have probably because I'm like a little bit community burned from my past life. Like, I'm not really in a place where I'm like looking to build and run my own community. I'm like, yes, the
Mm,
people who are in my groups, they connect, they meet each other, but that is not part of my promise. That is not part of
Yeah.
what I am telling people they are buying into. And there is a big difference there because if I am
Huge.
promising that connection in that community, that is like one thing that I then have to deliver on. And to your point, the emotional work and all of that that goes into it is there.
Mhm.
The fact that there's like natural relationships that emerge, great. But that's not the value proposition. And I think there is a big difference. Um, so let's just say there is someone listening and they're like, okay, I hear everything you said, and it's the right time for me to build a community and to do it. What is the one thing that what is the one piece of advice that you just want them to like just etch into their brains before they embark on their community building journey?
I would say that you have to do as much research as you can, not only about the type of platform to use, if it is, if you are taking this outside of social media, because while it's not impossible to switch platforms, even if you already have an established community, it can be really hard, and there's a big drop of engagement that could come with it. So I think just do a lot of research, make sure that what you're starting with is a good starting point that can then evolve into different things. So maybe it's not necessarily having that private platform right away, but a segue into it that can lead to that in the near future once you test and see that this is what people want, that it is working. So do as much research as you can before before you're ready to go out there and and
Yeah,
commit to something.
I love it. Bailey.
Begin with the end in mind. Like, make sure that you're hyper clear on why you're doing this. Like, yes, the purpose of the community, but also the goal, like your goal as the business owner, community leader. What are you hoping to get out of this? Right? Like, how does this community fit into the greater business ecosystem that you're
Mm-hmm.
running? Because if it's this island over here, it's going to get neglected, it's going to get ignored, or it's going to be doing different things than all the other verticals in your business. And it's really hard to like wrangle that after the fact. So make sure that it makes logical sense to add as an entirely new vertical to your business that does come with a significant amount of emotional and mental labor every single day, every single week. You will get triggered all the time by your members. Like, people are still people, and they're right there, and they have so much more access to you. And
Yeah.
that can feel extremely vulnerable. So it's really important to feel like you have the emotional fortitude to run a membership or a community. And it does make sense alongside all of your other offers. And if it doesn't, just maybe put a pin in it until it does, or like get really clear on then why do I really want to do this? What's the driving reason behind this?
Yeah, I love it. Car.
I forgot another thought. I feel like there's a lot of kind of a big trend into having multiple products, multiple offers, because if you have more, you can sell more and make more money. And I will be the first person to tell you that that is not true for the majority of people. It actually becomes a lot more harder to sell. It becomes way more confusing, way more overwhelming. You waste a lot more energy trying to figure out messaging and how to sell and calendars, blah, blah. So I would say go back to the results that you've gotten people and think about how can you create a community or a program or a membership based off of what you've already done. And I think that I see a lot of people getting burnt out right now because they're always trying to reinvent the wheel, create new programs, something that's never been done. And it's like, just go back to what you are known for, what you transform for people, and build off of that as a starting point. The other thing that I've learned is, have conversations with members or with your community. With like I'm saying community now, and I'm like, I don't think that's the right word. Have conversations with your clients, right, or with people that you've worked with in the past, whether they were paid or pro bono, and get their feedback on your program. But don't let it dictate your program. And I made that mistake very early on where I started adding all these elements that people were requesting. And I was just doing it to people please. And I was just doing it because I thought, oh, if I put this element in, they'll stay around for longer. And that's not true. So take everything that comes to you as feedback with a grain of salt and really go back to that promise, that transformation. Does this get somebody that result by having this included in the program? And then the last thing I'll say is when you're picking your platform, I made this mistake. Don't just pick a platform based off of the price alone. So if there's a platform that feels a little bit cheaper, a little bit more within your budget in that time, like I think Baily said, go to the end. What if this scales? What if you get 100 members? What if you're making 40K a month recurring revenue? You're going to have a huge headache. I had to do this where you're going to have to migrate your platform over to something more sophisticated that can actually hold your community much better, just because you didn't want to pay an extra $30 a month, or you didn't want to pay another $500 a year for that whatever elevated platform.
Yeah.
So those are the three things that I would say.
Yeah. Thank you, Car. And yeah, I think what you're saying about being the people pleaser side, right? And just being like, I need to add this, I need to add this. I feel like I saw a lot of that at the wing, and it really was really hard to scale over time. And what you said really made me think of is like, if I were going to tell someone, one thing that they need to do first, I would be like, you really have to clarify your core values and your mission for your community, like at the outset, and make sure that that is really foundationally there, so that you always have this like neutral litmus test to actually decide, do I need to add this thing, or am I just people pleasing? Like, is this me just wanting to do the thing, or is this actually aligned with the values and with the mission of what I'm doing here? And I think that it can be helpful sometimes to have these kind of like neutral things. So Sarah's been sending over a couple questions, so I just want to dive into these. Okay, this is a really interesting one. So if you have a following, right, and you feel like you could create a community, but you're a little bit worried, or it's become clear over time that you have the quantity, but not necessarily the quality, right? What have you done if you've been in that scenario, right, where you're like, I have a big following and audience, I'm not sure it's necessarily the right audience, or if you coach people through this, how do you help people kind of like reconnect to the right audience for their businesses? Like who, I feel like everyone here is going to have thoughts on this one.
I'll start by adding that happened with me when I was building Working Mom Kind, and I think the right people will follow you. And that goes back to, I know things are not the same in social media than what they used to be. And I keep saying this because it's the reality. And I think we should all kind of just, understand it. But if the right people will follow the content that you're putting out there, if it's speaking to them, and you wouldn't want to have thousands of people that don't agree with that or are not truly engaging and need that content. So if you have the audience, I would say, and this is just my personal opinion from what I've done, is start with launching something, whatever that is, whether it's an email list, whatever fits with what your end goal is, and see who bites. Like that really is how you start to kind of like fix, your offering or what you're trying to serve, like your landing page, your language, your captions, your content. If you see that 500 people sign up right away, then you're on to something. If only 5 sign up, then maybe you need to go back to the drawing board and kind of like see what else you can do. But it really is about, you have to put something out there and test out your audience and see what they're receptive to. And if it is a newsletter, then you can keep promoting it, start building your audience there. And it means that those people really want to see it and they're really interested, and then you can evolve from there. But you won't know if you don't try to test something out. But I always say that the right people will find you, and you don't want the others anyway.
Totally agreed. I love that. I always like, in line with that, I was like, things only improve or in the wild, right? We have to put things out there to then like build the feedback loop to then get sense. I love that. Baily or Car, any thoughts on what happens if you need to shift who's coming in?
The one thing you need to do, like before you do anything, is get crystal clear on your messaging. I have so many people that come to me and they've got ideas and they're brilliant ideas, and they have no idea how to even communicate what their expertise is. They have no idea how to communicate what the transformation they're getting for somebody is. They have no idea why somebody would buy. and they usually come to you with a list of like feelings. This person would buy because it'll give them more time. They're going to feel better. They're going to have like, increased awareness, whatever, right? And so go to your messaging and really get clear on what the heck you do and what you're selling and what's in it for the buyer. Because it's not just if you build it, they will come. I'm sorry, but it's not. It is
I was
not
going to
like
say
that
that,
at
Car.
all.
It doesn't
It
happen. We all
can.
think it's going to happen, and it doesn't.
It doesn't happen. And like at the bare minimum, you must have an email newsletter. That is not a negotiable anymore in 2024. It's not a maybe. It's you must have an email newsletter, and that you're repeatedly communicating with people and asking for their responses, not just like a one-way conversation either. So
I
Thank
love
you.
that because I always say that it's like when you go to a restaurant or when you go to a store, like, can you imagine showing up at Starbucks and they're like, we might sell shirts, but we also have coffee and you could get pastries, but we're also like an event space. And you're like, what can I do if I'm here now? So it's like having like a clear message is really important because you want to make sure that the right people are finding you and they're here for that reason. So I agree.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah,
Baily?
+1 to all of that.
Plus
+1
one
to
to
all of that. I mean, I've had people come to me and say, when I say, who's your community for? They're like, women in transition who feel overwhelmed. And I'm like, I've never met a woman that doesn't fit that description. So that's half the population of the earth. Let's narrow just a little bit. So it's like hyper specific on who this is for and the transformation and results you're going to help them achieve. That is imperative because otherwise, if you can't picture who is meant to be in your community, people can't see themselves in your community either. And the downside to having a community independent of one of the social media platforms is people have to actively go there. They're not going to just stumble upon it like a Facebook group, right? It's independent. And that's a positive thing, but it's a challenging thing when it comes to marketing. So if you have this interior like world inside of this community, am I good?
You froze
Was
for
I
a second.
frozen?
You're good
Just a
now.
little.
Oh, okay. If you've got your community behind a wall, you have to depend like deeply on your marketing message and all of that, because otherwise people can't see inside. So you have to describe it to them.
I love it. I love it. Okay, we're going to have time for one more question before I have some time for all of you to share a little bit more about where people can connect with you. So as community builders, I imagine you have joined your own communities, and I'm curious, what is one thing you're looking for when you join a community outside of your own?
That's a really good question. I
I'm
feel
looking
like
for people.
this is really just the way that I operate as a person anyway, but I feel like for me it needs to come recommended. I need to know someone that has been a part of it or know someone who's been in there, just for me to kind of make that commitment. But that's just who I am. So I not only do I want to know someone that's been in there, but someone who can speak and share their experience about being a part of it.
Yeah, I want to know that there's a solid reason for me to be there, right? Like, what am I getting from being part of this community? Because it is an exchange of time and energy. And, I joined a lot of Slack communities when I first went out on my own as an entrepreneur again. And I've now since left many of them because I didn't have enough time to give and the value wasn't clear enough of what I was getting. And so I need to know that there's a purpose to me being there and also that there are people there that I want to know, that like I want to be around, right? Like I just joined the Generalist World community like you, Frenchie, and I'm very excited. Oh, did I freeze again? Did I freeze again?
You did. It's okay.
I froze again.
There's people that you want to be
Anyway,
around. That was kind of where we heard you.
That's pretty much the gist.
Yeah, for me, I've realized this over time that I need to know what the ROI is going to be. And like, if I'm going to make a $10,000 investment, you better believe that I'm going to expect that I'm going to make at least double of that back. Just because it's expensive doesn't attract me to it. And then the other thing too is like, I like to see people that I've heard of or who I've seen, around go through that program. I usually won't invest unless, kind of like what Ingrid said, unless there's somebody who has spoken about it or has taken it and I admire them, or they've achieved something that I want to achieve. So that's how I've been choosing my masterminds and things like that.
Yeah. So I love this. what this is just kind of like really clarifying for me is that I, as someone who supports people in their businesses and like their products overall, the importance of delivery and actually creating a really good experience for people in the ways that they work with you is so essential, because the only way to build those referral loops and have those people in your communities or in your programs who are going to speak on your behalf to others is to make sure that the experience inside is really great, which I think is what all of you are really skilled and excellent at and have shared so much about. So thank you. I would love to just hear and have you all share, where can people find you and connect with you? Ingrid, where can people find you and connect with you? We'll kind of go around.
Yes, I'm actually going to put it in the chat. Everyone can see the chat,
I
right?
think so, yes.
So on Instagram, I'm at Grow with Community, and it's Ingrid's World, and then I put my website. I can't wait to connect with you guys. Send me a DM, and yeah, I'll see you in that corner of the web.
Cool. Car?
I just linked my Instagram. That's the best kind of starting point. You can also go to my website. It's all under my name. And yeah, send me a message if you came from here, and I will send you a freebie that you don't have yet.
I love it. I love it. Baily?
I am hanging out a lot on LinkedIn lately, so I'm over there. And then I will also drop in the chat. I have a list of 10 free questions to consider for a thriving community. There's also a list of 50 that is much more in depth, but the 10 will get you started. If you're like, I don't even know if I want to do this, I always try and talk people out of it. So if you still want to do it at the end, then bravo, go forth and prosper.
I love it. I love it. Thank you all so much. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Frenchie.
Thank you, Frenchie.
Bye.
This was so fun. Thanks.